Hello! Welcome into Crossing Broadcast on a Monday. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. You know, sometimes you talk about new eras of things, and sometimes you talk about things being out with the old, in with the new. Today's not one of those days, but I will say that one thing I'm very excited about for today's show is that Crossing Broadcast is currently streaming to more destinations than it ever has before. We didn't just keep it on YouTube today. We didn't just keep it on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Crossing Broad accounts. No. It's on my accounts as well. We're also live over on Instagram at Crossing Broad. So I want to thank everybody who's joining us today because I think today is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a big show. We have a lot to get into. And it's just like always, guys. What do I say every Monday? I say, let's get in. Let's kind of wipe away what happened over the weekend. If there's any bad, let's embrace the good that happened over the weekend. Let's have a chat. Let's sit down or stand. I'm standing today. I decided that, and I'm actually going to do this to make myself look a little bit taller. See that? That's amazing. Let's talk about what happened this weekend in Philly sports because there are some big things that happened this week. We have two teams that are potentially playoff bound, although the Flyers, we'll talk about them. They might be going to the playoffs. We'll see. We'll see. There's a chance. See, you're saying there's a chance. There's a chance. The Sixers are about to embark on the play-in game. 2 shots to make the playoffs. Obviously, you want to get the 7 seed to play the 2 instead of the 8 seed to play the 1. Because as I've said now for many weeks, you don't want to play Boston. The Phillies split their series over the weekend. They're 500 on the season. The Bats just aren't getting it done. We'll get into that in a little bit. And I even included that there's going to be a segment at the very end of the show. We're going to talk retro video games for a little bit today. Not a lot. And it's only because I went and I picked up some games over the weekend. And there were some people who replied to it on Twitter. And I assume, because everybody knows that Twitter is an exact reflection of how the world feels about things, I went, you know what? We're going to talk about the games that I picked up this week. And then you can let me know in the chat over on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, some of your favorite retro games. Let's have a conversation. That'll be at the end of the show. So the people who don't want to deal with that, you don't have to stick around to the end. But those of you who are diehard Crossing Broadcast listeners or viewers, let's have a chat as we get going. But the biggest news, the Eagles, they like to help me. Howie Roseman, I think, is just trying to continue to extend an olive branch to me. He gave me some news to talk about today. Because, sometimes we like to break the mold around here. We don't like to just jump right into the Eagles. But we have to today because the Eagles have the biggest news of the day. DeVonta Smith signs an extension with your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles. And it is a truly interesting, exciting time to be alive. Ian Rappaport had it first. The Eagles have exercised the 5th-year option on DeVonta Smith. And with the new extension, he's now under contract through 2028. One more playmaking star in Philly, all set moving forward. They've signed him to a 3-year, $75 million contract extension that includes $51 million in guaranteed money. Now, let's have a conversation about DeVonta Smith. How important is DeVonta Smith really, especially when you have a guy like A.J. Brown as your number 1? Guys, it's pretty clear. DeVonta Smith is critical. He's critical to the success of the team. Now, I know for a fact, and I think you all know it too, this is going to now spawn a bunch of bullshit on social media, probably on the radio, maybe Michael Barkan's blue glasses. We don't know. But what we do know is that DeVonta Smith signing an extension with the Eagles is going to lead to a whole bunch of bullshit speculation. Oh, does this mean that the Eagles are going to trade away A.J. Brown? Does this make A.J. Brown expendable at the draft? 610-632. No, it doesn't make him expendable at all. In fact, signing DeVonta Smith is the exact kind of move that when you are trying to sell a city on the idea that you are making a legitimate run at the Super Bowl, this is the thing that flies in stark contrast to what you did by dealing out Hassan Reddick. Signing DeVonta Smith is a short-term and a long-term plan. You are now locking in one of Jalen Hurts' top targets, a guy who won the Heisman, a guy who is accepted to some extent being a number 2 receiver on this team. You can make the case of 1A, but if we're being honest here, DeVonta kind of blows the top off the defense. A.J. Brown is your reliable. He's the guy that Jalen Hurts likes to look for more than anyone else. But having DeVonta Smith now under contract is massive in so many ways. And it makes things, I think, a little bit easier for what the Eagles are going to try to do this year offensively, right? It takes any question about what's going to happen beyond the season out of the way. You're not talking about having to go into a season talking about a contract extension. You're not talking about could he potentially leave at the end of the year. You don't have to have what probably would have ended up being a conversation about could DeVonta Smith go somewhere else. And it's all gone. Now you have him solidified. You have him here for 3 additional years, plus the option that's been exercised. DeVonta Smith in midnight green, Kelly green for the foreseeable future. And again, you put him alongside A.J. Brown. You have Dallas Goedert, and now you have Saquon Barkley in the backfield. I'm just going to throw this back out to Jason Kelce again. Like, you sure you want to be retired? You're positive? You're sure? I don't think you're sure. Maybe, but maybe not. I think I do think that as the season gets closer, I know that Jason Kelce said he's done. I know that Jason Kelce's out living his best life. I know that Shaq told him to prioritize his family over everything else. I know that Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson came out at night one of WrestleMania, where I was at, and helped Rey Mysterio pick up a win, wearing the Lucha Libre mask. Like, I get it. I know. I understand. But if you're Jason Kelce and you're looking at this from a distance, aren't you at least having a little thought? Aren't you at least having just a smidge of doubt, a smidge of regret? Look, you come back for one more year. You say, this is absolutely the final year my wife is going to leave me. Like, go into it with that. Then no one will blame you. All right? Because your marriage is the most important thing. But really, you sure you don't want to? Sure, you're positive. Okay. All right, we'll see. If the Eagles have an injury on the offensive line, which obviously we don't want here at Crossing Broadcast, if there were an injury, you mean he's not gonna at least think about it? Or if there's an injury leading up to a playoff push, you're telling me Jason Kelce's not going to remain in shape and that he's not going to be ready for that call? I don't know. I have a hard time imagining that he would pass up on the opportunity, especially if they prove that they really are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I have to think so. All right, this is me. You know how I am. I throw these things out there, and I'll keep my name by them. But I can't wait to see what happens here. Now, DeVonta Smith, I think it's probably fair to say on most teams is the number one receiver. It just so happens that you have arguably a top 3 receiver in the league, top 5, depending on your rankings, of A.J. Brown across from him. But when you're taking any kind of uncertainty about a guy's future off the table, he can now focus on the game. He doesn't have to focus on negotiations. He doesn't have to start to have that creeping doubt about what's going to happen beyond this year. It's an absolute no-brainer for the Eagles. I cannot imagine anybody's complaining about the money. If you are, again, I'll just point out to you that it is not your money. Craig on the ones and twos. Once again, what a stud. Finding my old tweets from 2021. DeVonta Smith is amazing. True. DeVonta Smith is a legit number 1. Also true. I said it then and I'll say it again. He is a number 1 receiver. It just so happens that you have 2 of them. And last time I checked, that's not a bad thing, especially if you're trying to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So, you know what? Kudos. Let's do a roaring round of applause on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for Howie Roseman getting this deal done. And a big congratulations to DeVonta Smith. That's a massive deal, $51 million guaranteed. That certainly gives your family financial freedom, and it certainly gets you set up with, I don't know, we call it generational wealth. I would say $51 million is generational wealth, right? Has to be, I would think. I'll certainly never see $51 million unless Snow The Goalie does something really crazy, really blows up big time, or Crossing Broadcast. But, yeah. David Berkowitz over on YouTube says, I love Hassan, but who stays that great at 30 in the NFL? It's a fair point. And again, like, I don't want to relitigate the Reddick versus Huff debate, but I do think that, again, it's kind of hard to sell a fan base on we are all in to win the Super Bowl and you get rid of that guy. I still think he's going to prove that he has a ton of value. I expect him to have a big year for the Jets, but we'll see. It's entirely possible that I'm wrong and I'm a total jackass. And like, if I am and we get to I don't know, like let's say we get to week 10 next year and Hassan Reddick has, 2 sacks, by all means, come back on a Monday and just let me have it. Just lay into me about how wrong I was. Clip this, make a mental note of it. Craig might even already be in the process of writing down the timestamp so he can clip it and he can make a mental note of it for October or for November. But listen, again, it's a really big move. It's a great move for the Eagles. DeVonta Smith, let's keep it on the positive, all right? And let's keep it going with the positivity because we have a lot of positivity going on in the city of brotherly love today. And why? Your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers have won 8 straight games. 8 straight. to close out the regular season. Now, look, I know where this is going, all right? And we don't have to go crazy here. We all know what the stakes are. We all know where the Sixers ended up. They finished 7th. They have the chance to go into the playoffs and take on the New York Knicks in the first round as the 7th seed. They were very close to getting that 6th seed that I kept saying they were in play for, that I really was hoping they would get to, and it didn't happen, and that's okay. The Knicks, I think, actually do present the Sixers with a truly interesting matchup, and it's one I think that the Sixers can win, again, assuming Joel Embiid is healthy, which, well, where have we heard this one before? If you have Joel Embiid at 80% against this Knicks team, I think you can win this series in 6 games. If Joel Embiid is less than 80%, or if he's only available in half of the games in the series, it could totally go 7, or it could even go against you. I don't think that a Sixers squad without Joel Embiid and knowing how well the Knicks can play at home and just how much of an absolute assassin Jalen Brunson is, I don't like the Sixers' chances if we go back and we look at this in the aftermath and we say, well, Joel Embiid played in 2 games and they were both in Philly. I don't like the Sixers' chances straight up, man for man. I don't. I think that the Knicks are a better team. I think they've proven it throughout this year. Again, I think Brunson is an absolute stone-cold killer. I think that Tyrese Maxey in a lot of ways can match him. And I think if you're looking at somebody who's going to go toe-to-toe, can match you bucket for bucket, I think that Tyrese Maxey has that in him. But outside of that, once again, you're left with this absolute hole in Tobias Harris. And that is obviously a massive hole. That is a guy that is an absolute disaster. And so, again, you come back to depth, you come back to the decisions that they made around the deadline, around was Buddy Hield a good deal? Are we happy with what he's provided to the team? Listen, this all comes back down to the big man. It always has and it always will. As long as Joel Embiid is under contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, the entire team's likelihood of advancing past the first round and maybe even past the second round, don't laugh, it all rides on Embiid. Tyrese Maxey can play out of his mind. Tyrese Maxey can go out and average 38, 40 points a game. But if Embiid is not Embiid, if he's not at 80% Joel Embiid, they have no shot. None. I'm actually starting to backtrack in my mind. I'm starting to think all right, 75% Joel Embiid. What does that look like? Can they win in 7? Maybe. But I'm not so sure. And that's the problem. When your best player is the guy who consistently is in and out of the lineup, it's hard to say with any kind of legitimate clarity in mind, and it's hard to say with any real, gusto behind it that you think that the Sixers can actually be a contender in the Eastern Conference. Again, we've talked about this now for many weeks, but the big issue that they have is the only team who can blow anyone out in this conference is Boston. The only team that you want to actively avoid in the postseason is Boston. I don't think that the Celtics are going to win the title. I genuinely don't. I don't think they have any shot. I think that no matter what, no matter who comes out of the West, I think is going to end up being a bad matchup for Boston. And I do think that Boston could very well get to the finals. They could sweep a couple of series. They could have a 5-game series. But ultimately, I don't think that they beat whoever comes out of the West. And it would be funny, but if the Nuggets come out of the West, they're not beating them. They're just not. I don't see a path. And it's funny because if you go listen to Bill Simmons, I think Bill Simmons would even probably admit that we've seen the same song and dance with the Celtics before. Very good regular season team. Can they get it done in the playoffs? No one ever seems to know. You look at other teams that can come out of the West. Oklahoma City. All right, OKC versus Boston. It's a young team versus a more experienced team in Boston. I still think OKC is a better team. Minnesota, I think Minnesota's a fraud. So I don't expect Minnesota to make the finals. The Clippers. The Clippers are maybe worth a conversation, but that so much of it depends on Kawhi and if Kawhi is healthy or not, and if Kawhi plays or not. Does that sound familiar? Maybe we need to bring Kawhi here. Maybe if we put Kawhi and Joel Embiid together, we can get one full healthy season out of one of them, and then just have the other guy, kind of sit out the whole year. Do I think that the Celtics could match up well with the Mavs? No. I think Kyrie would roast his former team. I think Luka Doncic would have his way. Phoenix is an interesting one. Does the Booker, Beal, and Durant three-headed monster. Did they take it to Boston? I think they have a good chance. And then you start to get into the real mess, right? Like New Orleans, fine. Boston wins that, but I don't like how does New Orleans get out of the Western Conference, right? The Lakers don't scare me at all. I don't think they scare many teams in the West. You give Anthony Davis a matchup against a big who has any kind of size, length, he's screwed. The more interesting thing here now is like, do the Warriors make it in? They're going to be in the play-in game. They take on the Kings first in that play-in game. The winner of that obviously goes on to play the loser of Pelicans-Lakers for the 8th seed. But let's bring it back to the East. Let's get the stage set here a little bit. Sixers take on the Heat in a play-in game for the 7th seed. The loser of that game goes on to take on the winner of Bulls-Hawks. Suffice it to say, the way that this should play out, barring a cataclysmic drop-off, and I mean like an all-time epic falling apart, it should be the Sixers and the Heat in the postseason. I don't know how Chicago is such a weird team. Do they have the ability in a single game to upend you and to throw any thought that you had about what should happen in a game out the window? Like, it is possible, but I don't see it. Do the Hawks scare anybody? They don't scare me. The Hawks are an absolutely rudderless franchise. And I don't see it. Now, obviously, the big thing if you're the Sixers is you want the 7th seed. Play the Knicks, avoid the Celtics for another round, and then advance. The Bucks falling to the 3rd seed is interesting because if you're the Pacers, not a great matchup. Not a great matchup at all. The one thing that Indy maybe has going for them is that Giannis is hurt, and there's a chance that he won't play to start that series. So if you're Indy and you can go and you can steal the first 2 on the road, and then you just have to pick up 2 in 5 games, does that make things interesting? Maybe it does. But the way that the conference is shaken out, I think for the most part, is what we expected it to. Cleveland fell to 4. Cleveland-Orlando in the first round, interesting matchup. Again, when you get to the second round, do either of them give the Celtics a real run? I don't see it. I really don't. Could be wrong. I don't think I am, though. Ford with an idea here, though, says if you had Jimmy Butler on Boston, they'd win 2 titles. I'm not so sure. You know, the thing that you keep coming back to is when you look at what Jimmy Butler's aura is and what his reputation is versus what he's actually put together the last few years. And I'm going to go regular season mixed in there as well. I think that there's a general overrating of what Jimmy Butler is at this point in his career. And if you talk to some people in Miami, they'll tell you that Heat culture right now, not overrated, but Heat culture maybe gets a little bit too much focus. All right. So again, I'm not saying that the Heat are bad. I'm not saying that the Sixers are going to run roughshod. I'm not saying the Sixers are going to blow the Heat out of the water. I'm not saying that at all. I want to be very clear. You have home court advantage on Wednesday night. You should beat this Miami team. Will they, though? Your guess is as good as mine. Again, it all comes down to Joel Embiid. Truthfully, it does. Like I always said, it always has, it always matters. We have a bunch of people saying that Jason Tatum is not an alpha, which I agree. And then what was it? Where is this at? Connor Allen. Just imagine if Tatum didn't score 83 points in the last 3 minutes of Game 6 last year. You know, this is the thing. When you look at why I'm not a believer in Boston, you have to remember that, Jaylen Brown had entire games where he vanished. And Jason Tatum in the 4th quarter, for most games of that series, was virtually non-existent. So, again, we could be in a situation a few weeks from now where I look like a total jackass and I've been wrong the whole time. I think that Boston's going to be a very good team until it really becomes nut crunching time, and then I expect them to wilt and to fold because there's past precedent for it. If you're a Sixers fan, though, I want to know in the comments, are you more excited now? You have this game against the Heat, and if God forbid that doesn't go the way that you want it to, you take on the winner of Bulls-Hawks. Where is your playoff concern meter at right now? Are you actively worried about what's going to happen this postseason for the Sixers? Do you feel any better? Is there anybody out there who thinks that the Sixers are going to miss the playoffs? Does anybody see them losing consecutive games and getting knocked out? I will say the play-in tournament, in theory, there's a small part of me that thinks It's unique. It's interesting. And at the same time, if you're the Sixers and you've put together an 8-game win streak to end the season, and you look at the fact that you ended on an equal record with the Pacers and the Magic, and just by virtue of tiebreakers, you're in 6th instead of 4th or 5th, or sorry, you're in 7th instead of 6th or 5th, I'd be pretty pissed off if 2 losses sends me home. I think it's a total disaster. Like, I think that that's where you have the right to be upset. And there's part of me that wonders if maybe the play-in game should only be for the 8th seed. But then again, you look at Miami, and they finished a single game off the pace of the Sixers. The Bulls and Hawks are dreadful, both under 500. The disparity between those teams, between the Heat and the Bulls and Hawks, is significant. So the play-in game in the East doesn't make a ton of sense. And you can make the case that it's unfair. At least with the West, the Kings and Warriors are both over 500. You can make a case that maybe because of how clumped things are in the West at the bottom, that it's a fair system, that you're giving teams the chance to prove that they really belong in the playoffs. But at least in the East, it's one of those times where you're just like, Jesus, man, like let's get through these games and see, you know? All right, so we got that. That's done. That's out of the way. Oh, Ford, 7 seed as I predicted. What was Kincaid? Kincaid said this the other day about Ford always being the guy who likes to point back to, I said this months and months ago. Craig, was there something you wanted to bring up here on the screen? I mean, I could bring it up if you can't. Ford says, Sixers down 10. What was this? Oh, this was a week ago. Sixers down 10. I'm sticking with Sixers get the 8th seed. They're not going to reach the 6th seed. And then tagged me and Kinker and Connor Allen. Well, Ford, it would appear as though you may have predicted that they got the 8th seed, not the 7th seed. So I don't know if we can give you the credit there, Ford, because 8 and 7 are not the same. But Craig, earning that $700,000 salary, what a pull. What a pull by Craig. Craig has the receipts. If you've ever been on Twitter, Craig has the receipts. And you know what? Nico's right, and we're going to bring it up here on the screen. What a pull by Craig. Absolute stud work out of Craig today. All right, let's go to another thing. Now, the Phillies, if we're being honest, and we're going to get to the Flyers here in a little bit, retro games, but first, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that the Phillies split a series over the weekend against the Pirates. The City Connect jerseys were out on full display. I genuinely do not have a thought either way on the City Connect jerseys in action versus when they were on the rack. I genuinely don't really care all that much about them. We had this argument last week with the Philly captain who Kinker got on the show, who I said sounds kind of like a Delco Gilbert Gottfried, who oddly, again, man of the people, but hates Dollar Dog Night, which is like kind of giving into the billionaire class. Very strange. Somewhat hypocritical, some might say, but I don't know. Like, who am I? I'm just a guy. Let's get into what happened in the Phillies series. And I'm gonna refer to 2 things. One, Crossed Up, which is a fantastic Phillies podcast, which you can find on the Crossing Broad Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. Big Bet Bob, Aunt Sanfoni. They did a show. It is in the podcast feed now. I think it might even be on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. If it's not, Big Bet Bob will probably get on Craigles here in the next 30, 45 minutes. But it is available in the podcast feed because I put that up. And I will tell you this. It was a very insightful show. But I'm also going to redirect you to something that is worth subscribing to. And he's not paying me for this. I actually should get Big Bet Bob at this point to sponsor whatever I do because I give him so many plugs. But the Red October newsletter, he broke it all down. He broke down this weekend stuff. And I thank him because essentially he's given me all of the stats that I was going to refer to anywhere that I wanted to have. But the Phillies struggled at points in this series. Nick Castellanos will point out the fact that he did have a moment over the weekend where he had the walk-off hit, and he had said that happy hitters or happy people hit the baseball better. And so he had a walk-off, and that was great. Let's get into what happened. They're at 500. They went 5 for 21 with runners in scoring position after hitting 3 homers in the opener. Only 7 total runs. 6 extra base hits over the final 3 games. Brutal. And when you look at it and you say, like, hey, are we overestimating just how bad or how much of an impact the Phillies' offensive woes are having on the team? We could look at the Zach Wheeler starts and just how putrid the Phillies have been scoring for him. Almost in the way that when Aaron Nola was the quote-unquote ace, how the team couldn't hit for him either. Maybe it's just the curse of whoever gets the opening day start. The bats just won't wake up. But they have the National League's worst scoring offense through the weekend. 3.63 runs per game. Only 4 teams in all of Major League Baseball have a lower runs per game rate. And those teams are a combined 21-40 this season. The Twins, the Mariners, the A's, and the White Sox. That's brutal. Horrific. Bryce Harper is probably your biggest issue because he's been effectively a 0. And he's in a critical place in their lineup. He's hitting 190 on the year. Now, I didn't expect Bryce Harper to come out and replicate his MVP stats of a couple years ago. I didn't. And I think that we all knew after he had surgery last year and he made his comeback and we kind of gave him, I think, plenty of leeway because he was trying to make this almost historic new precedent for recovery. I think that we all thought he was going to be closer to a healthy Bryce Harper year than the guy who did struggle mightily at times after he came back into the lineup last year. And he's not been that guy. And it's not good. And especially where he's at, like if Johan Rojas is your problem, right? Like if Johan Rojas is hitting like 175 or something, you expect that. He's not a good hitter. You have him in there for defense. Everybody and their mother knows, and their grandmother probably because it's baseball. They all know that Johan Rojas isn't a good hitter. But Bryce Harper's critical. All right, here we go. Craigles has another one pulled up here. Whoops. There we go. Bryce Harper hitting 190 through 15 games, the lowest batting average to start a season in his career. So there's your past precedent, right? He's never been this bad to start a year. We all expect Kyle Schwarber to take a while. We know that the Schwar bombs typically get delivered in the summer or as the weather starts to heat up. But Bryce Harper being a void in the 3-hole is brutal. It can't continue. I don't know what they're going to do because we know that Rob Thompson, for the most part, likes to give his guys plenty of leeway and let them hit through it and try to figure it out. But if this goes on for a couple more weeks, 3 weeks, and he's still not performing in that spot, you have to consider a change to the lineup. I'm not saying to pull him. I'm saying you might have to change where he's hitting in that lineup. But again, so many of these guys are underwhelming at this point. I don't know how you I don't know how you jar this lineup into doing something. Like, I don't know what you can do to jumpstart it. You gonna move Castellanos up to 3? Absolutely not. And let's talk about some numbers about how bad they've been in Zach Wheeler starts. Phillies are 0-4 in Wheeler start games. They've scored 6 runs. The opposition has scored 25 runs. Last I checked, that's bad. They also have the NL's 4th worst run differential this year. Now, I'm done going off of Big Bet Bob stuff. I'd encourage you to go over and check out Red October. Go subscribe. It's a free newsletter. Should he charge for it? Maybe. Maybe he should. But all this is to say that for a team that is so built up on the potential of what their lineup can be and not so much what their rotation is, in a weird kind of twist of fate, their pitching has really been the thing that's kind of kept them in games. The lineup has to figure it out. They have too many guys that are getting paid far too much money to perform at such a low, woeful level. I'm not going to sound the alarms yet, all right? You're 16 games into a very long season. Baseball has too many games as is. 162 games is insane. Somebody has to... I've yet to ever meet a person who said, you know what? You know what'll help baseball? More games. Let's get to 180 in the regular season. Maybe let's get to 200 games. There are too many games already. They're never going to go back. I cannot envision a scenario where the baseball gods are going to smile on Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred and say, no, take it down to 140 games. Take it down to 120 games. Why? Because you'll never break some of the records. And like part of the fun and part of the making money in sports is having a good story, primarily breaking records. That's why you don't see leagues go to less games and fewer games. Also, there's the gate revenue and there's a lot of other factors, but like you're never going to see that. You're only ever going to see them want to play more. Baseball, however, it's just too many games. The good news is that if you're the Phillies and if you're a Phillies hitter and you're having a hard time figuring it out, you have more games than anybody in any other league does to try to figure it out. And again, the hope is going to have to be that the Castellanos of the world are going to figure it out. And that obviously that the Bryce Harpers of the world are going to figure this thing out. And if they don't, if we're here in June, okay, and the numbers are as paltry as they've been, then it's absolutely red alert time. The red in Red October is going to be an alarm siren. Craig has a thing. Craig, Phillies offensive ranks in the National League through 16 games, 11th in hits, 14th in runs, 14th in RBI, tied for 13th in total bases, 5th in strikeouts, not ideal, 13th in average, 13th in on-base percentage, 14th in slugging, 14th in OPS. It's brutal, guys. I don't know what we can do. If you are a Phillies hitter, I know it's easy to say, like, you just got to hit the ball better. Trey Turner, we need you to hit better. There's not a standing ovation this year, all right? You can't pull the emergency lever of the standing ovation. You know what? Here's an idea. If showing Trey Turner love last year helped him, what if we do the inverse, all right? What if we don't react at all? Hear me out, all right? Because some people would say, well, the inverse would be to boo him. Technically, flip it. It's a 180, right? Booing versus cheering. No reaction. Pure apathy. In fact, do what some unions do when they're unhappy with whoever's in charge. You do one of these. I just realized that for the podcast audience, that's not going to be a lot of fun. You turn around and you make no sound. Cross your arms, turn your back. Maybe that's what we need to do. Let's try it, all right? Go down to Citizens Bank Park when Nick Castellanos comes up to bat or when Trey Turner comes up to bat. Don't boo them. Don't cheer them. Just turn your back. Show that you don't approve of the job they're doing. Now, the negative, obviously, you could get hit in the back of the head with a ball. But if you're in the outfield and you turn your back on these guys and you get hit in the back of the head with a baseball, it's because it was a home run. And in that case, I'd say we'd all agree it was worth you getting hit in the dome. Craig, behind the glass, would you take one on the dome if it meant it was a home run ball? He says no. Craig is not a true Philadelphia fan. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with Craig. I would say take one off the dome as long as you can get a home run. All right, done baseball. Let's talk about the orange and black before we get into retro games. Okay, and I guess we have to make this announcement now. Thursday's show is probably going to happen at a different time or day. So you're going to have to keep an eye on social media. You're going to have to keep an eye on the YouTube channel because as we know, Thursdays I have lots of meetings and I can't start the show and then walk away and then come back when it's just me. So Thursday's show will happen. It'll just be at a different time or day. I'm not sure what yet. Kinker is out for something and then he's going on vacation. Good for Kinker. So shoot him a tweet and tell him how much you think about him going out on vacation. But we'll figure out Thursday's show or whatever day it ends up being. It's going to be this week is like that. Monday, I'm back doing this show. And then next Thursday, Kinker's apparently out as well. So Craig behind the glass and I, we're going to figure it out. We'll get a guest. We'll get another host on here as well. We'll figure it out. It won't just be me ranting into the void to all of you on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. And as I forgot, Instagram Live. We love and appreciate all of you who are checking in over on Instagram Live as well. We're going to figure it out. We'll figure out the Thursday show. I'm just not totally sure yet. Now, in forgetting that Instagram Live is happening right now, I missed, and we can't pull it up on the screen here, and I'm really sorry to Philly Sports News with a lot of Z's. But Philly Sports News said, I'd take a puck to the head. I don't know if that, I guess for the Phillies, take a puck to the head. Or maybe a puck to the head for the Flyers to make the playoffs, and let's get into it. Your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers, who vomited all over themselves for 8 games, right? Isn't it like the beautiful balancing scale? The Sixers win 8 games to end their season. The Flyers lost 8 straight games, and then they kind of started to put it back together with a potential playoff berth on the line. As things stand right now, entering the Flyers' final game of the year, Tuesday night against the Washington Capitals, the Flyers have not been mathematically eliminated from making the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Now, we can come back. We could relitigate a lot of these things. We've talked about many of them over on Snow the Goalie. But what you as a fan need to know is the Islanders are sitting on 90 points. Flyers have no way to catch them. The Islanders will almost certainly make it into the playoffs. So you're looking at one final wild card spot, and there are 4 teams in contention for that spot right now. Okay? The Flyers have played 81 games. The other teams that they're going up against for the final wild card spot have each played 80. They all have a game in hand over the Flyers, which means a potential 2 additional points. Now, as things stand on Monday afternoon, the Capitals, the Red Wings, and the Flyers are all sitting on 87 points. Just behind the Flyers is a team that they had the chance to kill off earlier, like a month or so ago, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are led by a guy you might remember, Sidney Crosby. Okay? They're behind by 1 point, but again, they have a game in hand. The way that this is going to break down is as follows. The Flyers and Caps will play a game that could very well decide that final wild card spot on Tuesday. I say possibly and probably. The Flyers can't be mathematically eliminated between now and Tuesday. The big issue is that the Penguins have a game on Wednesday. So you couldn't, if you're the Flyers, if things broke your way, you can't win on Tuesday and have a celebration on ice that, you've made the playoffs. You're going to have to sit by the TV or by your phone, or by your tablet, by your computer, and you're going to have to figure out, where things stand. You're going to have to wait a day. Now, I'm going to pull up the NHL schedule here really quick to give you an idea of what remains. But Flyers, Capitals, 7 o'clock puck drop on Tuesday. Wednesday's slate of games, there's only one that really matters for the postseason in the Eastern Conference, and it's Penguins-Islanders. As I said before, more likely than anything, the Islanders are going to finish with the 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division. They will advance to the playoffs. They haven't technically done it yet because, in theory, they could lose their last 2 games, and a team like the Capitals could win both of their games and end up going up to 91 points. The Islanders would drop to 90. And then it gets a little bit hectic and frantic. But Islanders likely will finish 3rd in the Met. And again, it'll come down to Capitals, Flyers, potentially. And then after that, it's Islanders, Penguins on Wednesday. So if you're a Philadelphia sports fan, what do you need to have happen for the Flyers to have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs? Penguins play the Predators on Monday night. You need the Penguins to lose. That would then keep the Penguins a point behind the Flyers. They would have no chance of catching the Flyers if the Flyers were to win on Tuesday against the Capitals. So you want a Penguins loss tonight. That would be massive. You obviously want the Capitals to lose to the Bruins on Monday night. That's the team that you're chasing. That's the team that currently resides in that second wildcard spot. You want the Bruins to pick up a win against the Capitals tonight. And I think do I think that the Canadiens are going to beat the Red Wings in Detroit on Monday night? No. But Montreal gave the Flyers quite a few punches to the nose. The Devils game against the Islanders really doesn't matter on Monday night. So it really does come down to, can the Capitals lose to the Bruins? Can the Penguins lose to the Predators? Listen, I'm not going to try to sit here and tell you that the Flyers are a lock to make it in. I'm not going to say that the Flyers have the best chance of making the playoffs, okay? But they have a good enough chance. If they miss, it's a disaster. Now, Craig brought this up, and I was looking at the standings. Craig brought up a really helpful tweet here, so thank you, Craig. Canadiens have to win to beat the Red Wings. Need the Red Wings to at least split. Predators to win to beat the Penguins, and then Boston to win against Washington. Flyers can win in regulation or overtime to jump over the Caps. So let's kind of come back to this, guys, okay? The Flyers made some really bad moves down the stretch, okay? There were some unforced errors. The benching of Sean Couturier, I think, really did send shockwaves through that locker room. No one can convince me otherwise. And I do think that there were a few questionable lineup choices playing Mark Stalls of the world. And even Eric Johnson seems like a very nice guy, but even Eric Johnson in some of these games, bringing over Ivan Fedotov, they really hoped that it was going to be a boost for them. He has not looked comfortable as you would expect. He had just come over from Russia. He was still trying to break in new pads, new equipment. They still have a chance to make it. Now, I have always been somebody who said, rebuild, tear it down, or tear it down enough where you can get a top 10 pick, top 5 pick, because it is a rebuild after all. Sell guys at the deadline. Again, they made a very clear, conscious decision that they were going to try to remain relatively competitive while taking an absolute no-brainer in a first-round pick for Sean Walker, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. That is a no-brainer. It has made their team worse. It probably helped to exacerbate some of the issues that they had on the blue line with Nick Seeler being out, with Jamie Drysdale being out at times, and Risto. Risto's totally MIA. You're not going to see him this year. You won't see him if they make the playoffs. All that is to say, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. And if you're asking me honestly, Russ, would you rather see the Flyers miss the playoffs, have a little bit of luck around them, and get a better draft pick, or have them make the playoffs? I'm going to say I'd rather see them make the playoffs. I would, because if you're this close and you have a chance to give some of these guys an experience of what playoff hockey is like, that's the best teacher for them. That is invaluable experience. Will they get their doors blown off in the first round? Probably. Has Torts taken a bad team before and helped them upend a 1 seed before? Yes, they have. Columbus over Tampa. Do I think it would happen here? No. But make the playoffs, give a team a scare in the first round, and that will signal to free agents. This is why it's bigger. You're signaling to free agents that things might be on the come up, that things might be getting better. And it might not be for this free agent class, but it might be for the one after. And by the way, off in the periphery, you have Matvei Mishkov. You have him out there just waiting, plotting until his contract is up in Russia and he can come over. And then all of a sudden you have a legitimate thing on your hands at that point. Then you can sit back and say, we've got it. I mean, I think we're all kind of like circling 2026 is when Mishkov comes over. But like there is a path here that you get a top 15 pick this year plus a playoff, spot, or you get like a middle of the round. I just hate it, though. I do hate middle of the first round picks. You're so damn close. Take the playoffs. Take the playoffs. If this were last year's draft, though, I would have absolutely called for someone's head. In fact, I did last year, if you remember. Chuck Fletcher Mort. I call him Fletcher Mort on Snow the Goalie. Telling everybody that, we just need to get Cam Atkinson back. It's going to make a difference. Oh, we'll get Sean Couturier back. It'll make a difference. No. And that draft, by the way, had so many guys at the top of it that you could say if they're not franchise cornerstones, they're potential top line guys or top guys in general. This draft is not that. History could end up proving that the scouts were wrong about this one, but given the fact that this isn't perceived to be a deep draft, fine. Go make the playoffs. Have fun. Give everybody something to look forward to. And then you see. Sometimes you can ride a hot goalie to an upset in the first round. All right, let's get to one last thing before we head out. I put this out on Twitter over the weekend that I found a retro video game store. I found one in media, which actually I could tell you really quick why I ended up in media. I bought tickets to go see the Sixers' last regular season game on Sunday. I waited until 11 o'clock. I was doing some work here for the parent company and working on getting our content plan set for the weekend or for Sunday. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to spend some time with my family. And I was like, we're going to go to the Sixers final game because my kids haven't gone to a Sixers game all year. Our daughter has never been to a Sixers game. I actually don't know if our other kids have. Our oldest definitely went to one. But I was like, you know what? We'll go to a Sixers game. I found lower level seats behind the basket, section 214 maybe. I bought 5 tickets. They're like $60 each. I was like, this is a total no-brainer. You have to remember, 4 kids, it's expensive, right? But I was like, we're going to do it. Lower level. Basketball is better. Lower level. Hockey's better. As high up as you can get. So I buy these tickets on StubHub. Now, in fairness, last weekend with WrestleMania, I bought tickets on StubHub. They came to me from Ticketmaster. StubHub sent me the little notification 7 minutes later, your tickets are ready. Ticketmaster sent me an email, put them in your app. It was great. Totally seamless experience. Sunday, not so much. Chevy, I like Chevy here, by the way. Russ trying to remember all his kids is the real breakout video. No, I always feel weird saying like second son because he's our second oldest, but he's really not old. So second oldest or second son is weird to say, but like he technically he is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sunday, I buy these tickets. We're like 25 minutes after I bought them. Still nothing from StubHub, nothing from Ticketmaster. I start to panic a little bit. Our kids start acting up. We say, yeah, we'll just sell the tickets. And they're like, the tickets? And so they start getting themselves kind of like, oh my God, we have to be good. Okay, fine. So we go to get in the car and I look at my wife and I said, hey, I haven't gotten an update yet and I'm worried that the tickets aren't going to go through. She's like, well, why would that happen? So I explain it and it's just like, StubHub, they don't have the tickets, Ticketmaster just. We get on the Schuylkill and we're probably like 45 minutes into this drive because traffic around King of Prussia sucked. Traffic getting on the Schuylkill sucks. Actually, we might have even gotten on the Blue Route at that point, around Conchi. We got on the Blue Route, and I think that's when I got the phone call from a guy who, he was on a very choppy line, so I hung up, and then I get the email that it's not going to happen, that the tickets didn't work out. And Craig here on the Twitter. I bought these tickets, lower level, like $60 each, and StubHub's resolution to it was, hey, fella, pick tickets that are similar. So I said, okay, that sounds great. Let me find some other lower level tickets. It says you won't have to pay the difference. I'm like, hey, #blessed. Thank you, StubHub. Very kind of you. And then I see that the only tickets that are left are in like row 16 or something in the upper level. But to make up for it, StubHub was willing to give us a $6 credit for each ticket. So to recap, lower level seats, row 14 behind the basket, $60 each. I wait 45 minutes. I get notification. The tickets, they don't actually exist. We don't have them. But take these much shittier upper level tickets and a $6 credit. #blessed. And I said, nah, I'll show you where you can shove that stub. I got the refund. So then we pivoted. We went to media. And in going to media, I found a retro game store. Craig, I have them in my hands here, but you have the tweet there too. So I found 3 games that I either have some experience with or I thought looked fun. Okay? So this is where we have the retro game portion of the show. This might become a new part of the show. I don't think it will, but maybe it will. So I want all the people who are video game minded, okay? I want all of those people to let me know right now some of your favorite retro games. And I'll show you this. For the NHL fans out there, I found NHL 98 on Sega Saturn. And who's that butte right there? Peter Forsberg. Sega Saturn was one hell of a system. I don't remember when I got it. I definitely didn't get it when Sega Saturn was a thing. I got it way after the fact, but look at the graphics on this sucker right there. All right, that's not going to focus, but you can see. They're not great. I'm looking forward to this, though. I heard that somebody tweeted at me yesterday that the soundtrack on this one's insane, so I'm looking forward to getting to play this one. Sega Saturn games are hard to find. They genuinely are. I don't know why. It was a system that wasn't incredibly successful, that's for sure. The Dreamcast was mildly successful and still my favorite system, but anyway. My wife thought I was nuts. She was like, why'd you get Home Alone 2? Home Alone 2 for Sega Genesis. I remember renting this game. You remember back when you had to rent games? What was our video store was Hollywood Video? No, Hollywood Video was where you had to have money to go. And that was on the other side of Pottsville. I don't remember what this one was. Blockbuster was in Cressona, the Cressona Mall. Somebody from Skook will have to remind me in the comments, either live or after the fact. There was a little video, it was Video Corner or something. It was next to Palermo's on the Pottsville-Minersville Highway. Well, anyway, I used to rent this game all the time. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on a nostalgia trip. And my sons, before they went to school today, they're like, Dad, can we play this when we get home? And I said, no, but maybe. West Coast Video. Jamie, thank you. Jamie's totally right. Was West Coast Video. That means Jamie's a skook. Well done, Jamie. Well done. Final game. And Nico here says, WCW Revenge. Awesome wrestling game. I want to get to that one in a second. I found WWF Warzone. I don't know. Here, I'm going to cover up the logo, though, because they have to, blur out all of their logos these days. But Warzone for N64. I remember being at a friend's house and playing this and thinking it was, the greatest thing. I don't remember the mechanics. I feel like the wrestling mechanics, the wrestling system itself, the move system, was similar to WCW NWO Revenge. I have never, and I want to be very clear, I am such a hypocrite because as a kid, I loved wrestling and I would like put the towel down along the bottom of my door so that my parents wouldn't see the glow coming from my room when I was like watching Nitro and Raw going back and forth. Like I had the VCR set to record Raw and I'd watch Nitro live. So like I was such a hypocrite. Like at 6 years old, I was doing this, right? I don't let my kids watch wrestling. I let them watch Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins because on night 2 of WrestleMania, Seth Rollins came out, and Craig, see if you can find it. Seth Rollins came to the ring with the Mummers. It was like the Greater Philadelphia Mummers. I don't remember what the actual name, like Mummers Association. But Seth Rollins came out on night 2. And one of my buddies growing up, Lawrence, he and I grew up together. We were like in the same CCD class. We were in a lot of the same classes throughout high school and everything. We went to college together, right? Like one of my longest, bottom right, there's a big Barry Sachs getting held up, and it was my buddy Lawrence. And I was like, why the hell didn't you tell me you were going to be at WrestleMania Night 2? How could you not tell me? I think that's his head, like bottom right above the little green dot. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, we had to sign NDAs. We couldn't let anybody know that we were going to be at WrestleMania. And I thought it was really cool. It was like a fun moment where it's like, I'm the big wrestling fan, but my buddy gets to be the one who gets to like make the WrestleMania entrance. It was really cool. So I don't remember how I got there off of this, but I picked up Warzone. It's very exciting. I'm looking in the comments really quick to see who else had a game up here. Nico, World Cup 98 on N64. Great opening song. I'm trying to remember what the name of the game I have for Sega Saturn is. There's like an old soccer. It was like Worldwide Soccer 97 or 98. That has a great soundtrack. It's all this like generic Sega-y sounding music, but fantastic. Anyway, I'll have a review next week, or maybe even on Thursday. I'll let you guys know what I thought of NHL 98. Let's see. Sean says Warzone is garbage. Should have went with Attitude. Attitude is a fine game. I have it on Dreamcast. When I think it was who was it before? Was it Nico before who said about WCW NWO Revenge? Great game. Then they went to Mayhem. It was WCW Mayhem. Was a horrible game, and I didn't remember hating it as much as I do now. I pulled that game out a couple weeks ago. This is the whole thing about teaching my kids how to play a video game. I let my oldest play WCW NWO Revenge. Like we did the Battle Royal mode, and of course I whooped him. But in the first game, I was like, all right, buddy, we'll have a truce. We won't go after each other. He knocked me out of the ring. So then all bets are off. All right, he hasn't beat me since. But Mayhem, horrible, horrible wrestling engine. Like incredibly difficult to do anything in that game. Revenge was great. I forget what Warzone's mechanics are like, but I'm going to find out later. So anyway, that's your retrograde segment of the show. Chevy says that there's a nice video game store in Lansdale by Kinker. So now I'm going to have to get in touch with Kinker and figure out what it is, where it's at and how good it is. All right. I think that's probably it. Joey B asks if Slapshot is too mature for his 14-year-old. Joey, this is where I tell you that, as we all know, I like Goon. Goon is my favorite hockey movie. I have not watched Slapshot all the way through. My assumption is still too young, but I can't say that definitively. Hop over on Snow the Goalie the next time and ask Bundy and Ant, and they'll have an answer for you. Sean C says, NHL 99 was my favorite game as a kid. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. on school days to play a game and go to the bus. Went 81-1 in a season, lost to the Devils. Sean, I want to know if the loss to the Devils was at the beginning of that season or if it came at the end. Like, did you have it in your mind you were going to, like, turn off the game and restart it if you were close to losing with, like, a minute left? That, by the way, is the worst part of games now, and Craig can attest to this. Probably not. But, like, now, because of autosave, you, like, turn off a game, and in a lot of cases, like, on PS5, it'll save your place. And it's like, no, I was about to lose that match. I wanted to shut my system off. And then the systems get mad at you when you turn them off now. They're like, oh, you're going to damage the hard drive. A whole bunch of crap. Okay, just awful. I think that's it. I think we're good. Joey B, though, Joey B's hating on WrestleMania. Just hurtful. 30-plus-year-old men with no children at these events acting out matches as they happen disturbing. Well, in fairness, Joey B, I have 4 kids. I'm allowed to like wrestling. Thank you. Thank you, Joey B. But if I didn't have kids, you know what's more concerning? Here, I'll end the show on one hell of a take. Joey B says on YouTube that WrestleMania and WWE It's disturbing that there's 30-plus-year-old men with no children at the events acting out the matches as they happen. You know what I find is more concerning? Adults, typically the single adults who go to Disney World. If you're like 30 years old and your highlight of the year is going by yourself to Disney to go get pictures with Gaston, we got some issues. You can love Disney. I'll just do the whole, everybody, enjoy what you do in your life. If you're like 35 and you're going to Disney for funsies and to go get the autograph of like Chip and Dale or to go get the autograph of Baloo, your priorities are off. And I know a few people who I went to college with who are very big Disney people, and I don't get it. Disney's lovely. If you're a kid, Disney's fine. Sean C. says Disney adults, they fly down there for the day. I don't get it. I love a lot of things in this life. That I don't get. Chevy says it's worse if they film on TikTok. I actually think it's better. If you're going to Disney to do content and you have a successful channel, no problem. I think it's slightly weird, but you're doing it as something that's going to help you with your social channels, okay? But if you're like I'm going to keep increasing the age. If you're 38 and you're a single adult circling the day to go like act like a kid again, no. Now, if you tell me, hey, my wife and I are going down to Epcot and we're going to drink around the world or whatever, live your best life. Totally fine. No problem. But like stalking, I'm going to say Gaston again because I can't remember any other Disney characters right now. But like stalking Cinderella or something to get a picture and an autograph at like 39 years old. Nah. It's strange. Anyway, time to go. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Keep an eye out on Crossing Broad social media on Twitter, Facebook, probably Instagram. We'll make an announcement about when the show later in the week is going to happen. Like I said, will not happen Thursday at noon. It might happen on Thursday at a different time. It might happen on a different day at noon. I have to look at all of the work meetings, and I'll figure it out. I'm not sure who the guest is going to be or who's going to hop on with me, but there will be somebody. So make sure you keep an eye on social media. And obviously, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because if you subscribe to the Crossing Broad YouTube channel and you ring the bell, you'll get notified whenever we go live with the show. And I'll also encourage you to take a look in the description of the episode. If you're looking for more hockey talk, go subscribe to Snow The Goalie. If you're looking for wrestling talk, it's just wrestling. I did an episode last week about the absolute stupid idea that AEW had airing the CM Punk and Jack Perry footage. I'll have some stuff about WrestleMania weekend and the week coming out of WrestleMania on It's Just Wrestling this week. And David Berkowitz asks on YouTube, are the Flyers going to be in? I don't know. I wouldn't bet against Sidney Crosby. I said it months ago. You don't bet against Crosby and Malkin. I think Pittsburgh ends up getting in, but I'm glad that at least Tuesday's game is going to matter somewhat, and I expect an absolutely raucous crowd at Wells Fargo Center on Tuesday night. So time to go. Everybody have a great rest of the day, and I will talk to all of you later this week here on Crossing Broadcast, your favorite Philadelphia sports podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to all of you.